I want you to just picture something for a moment. It's the late 1700s. You look out your window, and the world just feels off. Not just bad weather off, but like fundamentally broken.
Right. There's this vibration running through society, a kind of collective feeling that history, actual human history, is speeding towards some kind of massive, definitive endpoint.
It really was a unique psychological moment. And today, we're doing a deep dive into a really specific high-tension slice of that history. We're looking at the years 1755 to 1843.
Our main source for this is a historical manual, Church Heritage, and we're zeroing in on the section called Heralds of the Advent Message.
Exactly. And the mission for this deep dive is to really unpack the why. Why did all this panic and anticipation just explode right then?
We have to look at the spectacular signs in the natural world that people felt were triggering this, but maybe even more interesting, we get to meet this just eclectic cast of characters.
And what a cast it is. I mean, we're not just talking about some theologians in an ivory tower or something.
No, not at all.
We're talking about a reluctant farmer in upstate New York, a Jesuit priest in South America, a Jewish-born wanderer. All of them, somehow, independently, coming to the exact same conclusion.
That the Messiah was coming. And soon. It's this incredible convergence of, well, nature and intellect that just created a global phenomenon.
Okay, so let's start with the alarm bells. The source material lays out these three spectacular signs. But I have to ask, earthquakes happen, bad weather happens. Why does these specific events make everyone freak out?
That is the crucial question, right? You have to put yourself in their mindset. In this era, people weren't just reading natural disasters as, geology or atmospheric events.
They saw them as something more.
They saw them as theological markers. They were literally reading the book of nature right alongside the book of Revelation. It was like they were checking items off a prophetic list.
Okay, so item number one on that checklist. It takes us back to 1755, the Lisbon Earthquake.
November 1st, 1755. And this was not a localized tremor. The source says it covered more than 4 million square miles.
4 million? That's massive.
It's huge. The destruction in Lisbon was obviously catastrophic, but the shockwaves themselves were felt from Scandinavia all the way to the West Indies. And to the people of that time, that scope was deeply significant. They connected this specific event to the opening of the sixth seal in Revelation 6. The text says, "And lo, there was a great earthquake."
So the earth literally shakes, and people immediately open their Bibles.
Yeah.
But then 25 years later, things get darker.
Literally. The dark day, May 19, 1780.
This one always gets me. It happened in the northeastern United States. It's morning, sun's up, people are out in the fields, and then the lights just go out.
And it wasn't an eclipse. That's the first thing everyone checks. The planetary alignment was all wrong for that.
The source quotes Noah Webster, the dictionary guy, writing about it years later.
It does. And he said, "No satisfactory reason has ever been given to explain the reason for this darkness."
The description is so vivid. It says the darkness was so complete that, and I'm quoting here, if every luminous body in the universe had been struck out of existence, the darkness could not have been more complete.
Can you imagine the psychological impact of that in 1780?
Yeah.
You've got cows coming home to the barn at noon, birds going to roost.
It would be terrifying. But for the people studying prophecy, it was confirmation.
Exactly.
Okay, but how? The source mentions some really specific timing here, something about 1260 years. Let's unpack that, because it sounds a bit like a math problem.
It is a bit of a logic puzzle. They're referencing Mark 13.24, which predicts signs happening in those days, right after a period of tribulation. The prophetic timeline they were using pointed to a 1260-year period of persecution.
The one they associated with papal supremacy.
Right. And they calculated that period would end in 1798. That was the hard stop date for them.
Okay.
But the Bible also says those days of persecution would be shortened. And historically, the intense persecution really did ease up with the Acts of Toleration between 1773 and 1776.
So they had a window.
Exactly. The sun going dark had to happen after the persecution was cut short in the mid-1770s, but before that 1260-year period technically closed in 1798.
And May 1780 fits right in that narrow slot.
Precisely. For them, it locked the timeline perfectly in place.
But the show in the sky wasn't over yet. We jump forward to 1833, November 13th, the falling stars.
The third spectacular sign, and the descriptions are just cinematic.
Streams of fire coming down from heaven.
Yes. This was the Great Leonid meteor storm of 1833. It was seen all across the Western Hemisphere. The source says meteors were falling thick as snowflakes in a snowstorm.
And people were panicking. It says horses were frightened, people were made sick through fear.
They thought the sky was literally falling, and for those watching that prophetic clock, this was it. This was the final piece of Revelation 6:13. You had the earthquake, the dark sun, and now the falling stars.
So the alarm clock wasn't just ringing anymore.
It was shaking the whole house.
Okay, so nature sets the stage. The audience is terrified, and they're paying attention. Now we need the script, the actual message they started preaching. The source calls them the three special angels.
Are we talking about literal angels with megaphones?
No, and the source is very clear about this. It's important for understanding the theology. These are symbols. The three special angels symbolize a message that was entrusted to people.
It's a job for humans.
A job for humans, yes, empowered by the Holy Spirit.
So this is a broadcast. What was the breaking news?
It's a three-part alert, right from Revelation 14. The first angel is a call to allegiance. It's worship the Creator and recognize that the judgment hour has arrived. Not that it will arrive, but that it's here. The process has begun.
Which fits the mood perfectly.
Perfectly. The second angel's message is that spiritual Babylon is fallen. It's a call for separation, urging people to leave what they saw as corrupt religious systems.
And the third?
The third angel is a pretty stark warning against receiving the mark of the beast.
That's some heavy stuff. Very heavy. And this is what suddenly made the books of Daniel and Revelation feel less like ancient history and more like, well, like the script for current events.
Which brings us to the man who really became the face of this whole movement in America. The Morning Star, as the source called him, William Miller.
Miller is such a compelling figure because he's just so unlikely. He wasn't some lifelong preacher. He was a farmer, eldest of 16 kids, and for a long time, a deist.
Right. A deist believes God created everything and then just walked away. So he actually questioned the Bible.
He did. But the source talks about this miraculous shift he had. He converts to Christianity, but then his deist friends kind of corner him. They basically say, okay, prove it. Prove to us the Bible is accurate.
Challenge accepted.
And how? He spent 15 years, from 1816 to 1831, studying the Bible verse by verse. The rule he set for himself was that he wouldn't move to the next verse until he understood the one he was on.
That is dedication.
Yeah.
So what did he find?
He found math. Specifically, the 2300-day prophecy in Daniel 8 and 9. His interpretation was that the cleansing of the sanctuary wasn't about a temple, but about the cleansing of the earth by fire at the second coming.
And when you do the math on that prophecy...
He concluded it would all happen around the year 1843.
Okay, but he sits on this for years. He's terrified of public speaking. He's 50 years old. He's a farmer. He does not want to be a prophet.
And this leads to one of my favorite stories in the source material. The Covenant.
Yes. Let's get into this. It's August 1831. He's in his farmhouse, feeling this immense pressure to share what he's found. So he makes a deal with God.
It's a classic stall tactic, really. He prays, I'll go tell the world what I found if I receive an invitation to preach.
He probably thought he was safe. I mean, who invites a random farmer to preach?
He must have felt so relieved. He sits down in his chair, and the source says, 30 minutes later.
30 minutes.
There's a knock at the door. It's his nephew, Irving Guilford. She'd ridden 16 miles from a town called Dresden. And he says, Uncle William, our minister is away. My father wants you to come talk to us about the things you've been studying.
I can just imagine Miller's face. The source says he was angry with himself for making that deal. He storms out to a grove of trees and argues with God for an hour.
But he kept his word. He went. And that one invitation kicked off a movement. He ended up preaching to over 100,000 people.
But Miller couldn't do it alone, right? He had the message, but he needed a megaphone. That's where Joshua V. Himes comes in, the promoter.
Himes was the engine. He met Miller in 1839. Miller's 57, Himes is 35. Himes was just dynamic, organized, fearless. There's a quote in the source where he says, I laid myself, family, society, reputation, all upon that altar of God.
Wow, he was all in.
Totally. And he launched a media blitz. He published the first periodical on the Second Coming, Signs of the Times, in 1840. Then the Midnight Cry, which, get this, had a daily edition of 10,000 copies.
In the 1840s, that's insane viral reach.
It was mass media before mass media was really a thing.
And speaking of media, we have to talk about Charles Fitch. He brought in the visuals.
Fitch was fascinating. Preacher, writer, hymn writer. But his big contribution in 1842 was the prophetic charts.
The first PowerPoints.
Essentially, yes. He realized that explaining these complex prophecies, with beasts and statues and timelines, People needed to see it. It was audio-visual evangelism.
But Fitch's story has such a tragic ending in the source.
It really does, and it just highlights how intensely they believed all this. It's October 1844. It's cold. Fitch had just baptized a group of converts in a lake. He's shivering, ready to go in, but another group comes forward.
So he goes back in?
He goes back in. And then a third group comes. He caught a chill. It turned into pneumonia.
And he died on October 14th, 1844.
Yeah.
Just 8 days before he believed Jesus was going to return.
He died fully believing he'd only be in the grave for about a week. It's heartbreaking, but it shows you these weren't grifters. They believed this with their actual lives.
Absolutely. And the energy was just explosive. You had Josiah Litch, a former skeptic turned believer. You had James White, this young guy on horseback in winter, converting 1,000 people in 3 months.
It was an incredible groundswell.
Now, here is where it gets really interesting for me. It's easy to dismiss this as just some American frontier revival. But the source material is adamant that this was a global phenomenon.
Yes, and this is a crucial part of the deep dive. The source claims this was a simultaneous, independent movement. It wasn't just Miller's ideas getting exported. People all over the world were looking at their Bibles and coming to the same conclusion at the same time.
Let's talk about Joseph Wolf, the missionary to the world.
Wolf's life reads like an adventure novel. He was born the son of a Jewish rabbi. He converts to Catholicism, but then challenges the church's authority and leaves.
And then he just hits the road.
All over the road. Africa, Syria, Persia, India. The source says he was beaten, starved, sold into slavery, and faced the death penalty 3 times.
And he spoke 14 languages.
He did. And everywhere he went, he preached about the imminent reign of the Messiah. And he was doing this completely separate from William Miller.
Then you have the child preachers in Geneva. This story is so strange.
It's about a man named Louis Gaussin. He was a preacher in Geneva, but the adults in his church were too set in their ways to listen to his message. So he switched tactics. He started teaching the children.
If you can't reach the parents, teach the kids.
Exactly. And the kids got it. The source says the adults eventually got curious, came to listen to the children explaining the prophecies, and were convicted.
That's incredible.
Gaussin was actually suspended from his own church for using the Bible to teach instead of the catechism. It's a recurring theme. People breaking with tradition to go back to the text.
We even see that inside the Catholic Church with Manuel de la Cunza,
the Jesuit priest from Chile. He was dissatisfied with the standard Catholic interpretation of prophecy, so he just read the Bible for himself. He wrote a book, The Coming of the Messiah in Glory and Majesty.
Under a pen name, right.
Yes, Juan Ben Ezra. And here's the connection. His work gets to England, where a man named Edward Irving reads it.
Edward Irving, the giant.
A literal giant, 6'4", a Scottish evangelist preaching to the British elite. He learned Spanish just so he could translate Lacunza's book into English.
These threads are just amazing. A Jesuit in Italy influencing a Scottish preacher in London.
And then you've got Francisco Ramos Mejia in Argentina, a national hero, a wealthy landowner. He wasn't a priest, but he believed in the imminent return, and the source notes he kept the Sabbath, totally independent of the movement in the U.S.
It really paints a picture of a world spiritually waking up all at once.
It does. I mean, think about the diversity. Rabbis as sons, Jesuit priests, New England farmers, Dutch museum keepers who were having visions. They're all separated by oceans and languages, but they are all staring at Daniel and Revelation and saying the same thing.
It's time.
Exactly.
And that brings us to the real cliffhanger of our source material for this deep dive.
The year 1843.
The heralds have done their work. The alarm bells from nature have all rung. The message has gone out globally.
Miller and Himes have set that specific time frame between March 1843 and March 1844. The tension is just unbelievably high.
The source mentions people were so convinced that some didn't even plant their crops that year. Why bother if you're not going to be here for the harvest?
It shows you the absolute certainty they felt. They had what they saw as physical proof in the sky, mathematical proof from the prophecy, and this deep internal conviction.
But as we wrap up, we have to leave our listeners with the reality of what that date really means.
That's the pivotal moment. What happens when a global movement, one driven by absolute certainty, runs up against the hard reality of a calendar date?
It's a question of what happens when faith meets a deadline.
Precisely. Does the movement just crumble? Or does it somehow evolve?
That is a story for another deep dive. For now, we leave the Heralds in 1843, eyes on the sky, waiting for that midnight cry. Thanks for listening.
It's been a pleasure.